is November 24th, 2025, and as we have this 28-point plan coming from the Trump administration, as we have different revisions of that coming from the EU and apparently also from Kiev, we also have to keep an eye on what's happening on the battlefield, on the significance of the advances that we're seeing from Russia as they not only take territory, but wear down Kiev's defensive lines all along the front lines, and what it means for this grinding war of attrition, and what it also means for the timeline of when a deal will be possible for NATO, if that is the case at all, because clearly they cannot be trusted. Clearly, they don't even have enough respect for Russia to come up with a deal that Russia should fully take into account. So what does all of this mean for the overall conflict? Well, we got into all of that and more with a special guest earlier. So let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Stanislav Krapivnik, a former U.S. Army officer, military and geopolitical expert, and host of the In the Eyes of Truth podcast, who joins us from Moscow. Stas, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. Now, I want to get your take on the latest here, and I know that you made a video recently breaking down Trump's 28-point plan in detail, which I will link below. But I wanted to start out by asking you, what was your overall reaction to this plan and the timing of it, especially as you have Russia making these significant advances in its overall war of attrition against Kiev?
Yeah, so we're entering that final phase of the war of attrition where the one side just runs out of people. And since Russia has always had superiority in artillery, tube artillery, rocket artillery, aviation, and then caught up with drones also, now has drone superiority. The Ukrainian side has actually taken much heavier casualties than the Russian side. Never mind, Russia has a manpower pool of 5 times larger. It's suffering much lower casualties compared to the Ukrainian side. And as this war progresses, the experienced people are killed, or they run away, or they're wounded, incapacitated, they don't come back. And the Ukrainian side is just throwing meat, basically, just guys off the street. You know, today you're walking on the street, today is Monday, you're walking on the street and getting kidnapped. Next Monday, you're dying on the battlefield. And if you're the average Joe, you've been given an assault rifle and you've held it once or twice, and then you're sent off to fight. So it gets to a point where the calculus just goes against, in this case, against the Ukrainian side. So Russia begins to accelerate the progress because the enemy can't hold back the movement. So from the Trump side, the way I see this picture, whether Zelensky realizes this or not, because it's under a very big question how much he even knows what's really going on. Because I've heard from different people, and there's been different reports that came out from there that they don't tell him the truth because he couldn't handle it psychologically. So he's in La La Land, cocaine-induced La La Land. So Yermak and Padalok are the only ones that are interfacing with him. Occasionally they bring Sersky and clean him up and have him tell some fairy tales. But other than that, and nobody else wants to face reality out of the Europeans. But the Americans understand where this is rolling to. And they're in a hurry, in a panic to try to get something out to get Russia to effectively capitulate. Because if you look at these 28 points where they go, oh, it's everything for Russia, there's nothing in there for Russia. There's only one point that's worth anything in that, and it shouldn't even be in this document, and that's restarting talks on START 1, and as put in there, and other agreements on nuclear deterrence. There are no other agreements on nuclear deterrence because the U.S. exited all of them. This is the last one, I mean, realistically speaking. But that shouldn't even be part of this. This is something that should have been getting handled separately. Everything else is basically Russian capitulation. And here's our money, and thanks for stealing our money, and we'll thank you for that too. It's basically if you ever watched Animal Farm, thank you, can I have another? When they're slapping them with the paddles, it's that kind of thank you, can I have another? Thank you, can I have another? Well, and that's what is being looked at on the Russian side also. it's being answered diplomatically. Yes, this could serve as part of the foundation. Translation, hell no, we don't want this, so we're not going to accept this. And the very last, out of all this crazy points, like, for example, Ukraine has to shrink its army to 600,000. Yeah. Well, Ukraine started this conflict out with an army of 250,000. It's just what they count as army now is mostly not army. It's the press gangs, it's the emergency services, it's the police, and it's the military. So they get up to like 1,200,000. But the reality is, vast majority of that are not military. Those press gangs aren't military. They may wear camouflage, but their big bravery is ganging up on some guy, 3 or 4 people, beating the crap out of him, tossing him in a van, or occasionally killing him if he resists too much. And now they're going to get an army of 600,000, and this is supposed to be good somehow. Trump gets to take Russian frozen assets, spend them, take the first half of the profit margin off that, and it just goes on and goes on. But the last point is the best point. That just summarizes how ridiculous just crap all of this is, because the last 28th point is, and upon signing this memorandum, we will go into a ceasefire. First of all, so this is all just about getting a ceasefire, not about any kind of negotiated anything. And as somebody, I was a director in supply chain, signing $100 million contracts, and I can tell you memorandums are nothing. They're not worth the paper they're written on. They're not a legally binding document. It's a letter of intent, basically. Yeah, okay, this sounds good. We'll talk about it later. We signed the memorandum. It's not an agreement. But the simple fact that, that's point 28. So it's kind of, and ignore the other 27 points because all we wanted was a ceasefire, effectively.
Yeah, that really stood out to me too. And I think summing it up as a letter of intent is a great way to describe it, because I'm going through this and there's so much vague wording, right? These vague security guarantees for Ukraine, this idea that, oh, we're going to, lift the sanctions case by case. So essentially, if NATO approves of Russia's behavior and they think that they're acting right, then they'll lift more and more sanctions. I mean, there's so much in this that feels like a non-starter for Russia, but yet the West is actually framing it as, oh, this is capitulation for Ukraine. This is Ukraine giving everything up. And I look at this and I go, okay, so it's not just Zelensky living in a fantasy world. It's the entire West that seems to think that somehow Kiev is just going to, I don't know, continue in this world. I'm not sure, continue in this war, rather. I'm not sure what they think is going to happen here, how it's going to be good for them. But when you look at the timing of this coming from the West and even the new European revision, which is even worse and even more of a non-starter, how do you see the position that NATO is in right now?
Well, NATO is in a lose-lose position. NATO has one of two choices: accept strategic loss, or go in and put on the big boy pants and go have a war, a real fighting war. I mean, let me put it another way. NATO has lost a lot of people. Literally, there are a lot of dead Poles, Americans, Brits, etc. And I'm not talking that in the sense of mercenaries, like, hey, watch television, I'm going to go fight. There were quite a few of those people that got brainwashed by the zombie box early on and had no military experience, and they were just thrown in by the Ukrainians as meat. And when some of them tried to run, they were shot on the spot. When they figure out, oh, this isn't a safari, and the quote animals we're going to safari are shooting back, and they have superiority. They've got tanks, they've got artillery, and this isn't this isn't a video game. Everything's very real. But there are, the first time I went down was the 24th of December, 2022. And quite literally, what saved my life, because we were in some bad locations, is trying to get down in a big Ford van through some very broken roads. And we were in a white van, so we're it'll be good camouflage. Well, it's about 1.5 feet of snow in Moscow. We get down there, green grass and mud. Absolutely no snow, so no camouflage. Big white van. The only thing that saved us was that it was the 24th of December, and the guys that were sitting across from where we came up and delivered a hill were Poles. There's been over about 10,000 Poles have been killed. in this. These are not mercenaries. I mean, they're called mercenaries. These are Polish battalions that do rotation on the front to get combat experience. And yes, of course, they're taking losses and not small losses. There are, I've got contacts in Kharkov. They're telling me, before that, there was a lot of dead and wounded Czechs because they were manning the Vampire multiple launch rocket systems that they were hiding inside or underneath buildings, residential buildings, and shooting those rockets that would reach Belgrade, the edges of Belgrade. So the Russian forces were very actively hunting them down. Now I've been saying for a while that the main wounded that go through these hospitals in Kharkov are Germans. Germans have now become the majority. Before that was the French. There are hundreds of dead Frenchmen all over the place. So that's why Macron is so apt to, send NATO in, because he's got to explain a lot of dead Frenchmen. He's got to explain a lot of dead Frenchmen. If he sends in any French units officially, well, you can kind of scoop all the other casualties underneath the casualties of that unit, whether you're sending a brigade or 2 brigades, and make them kind of disappear. But, there's a lot of Americans. Unofficially, of course. The HIMARS systems are manned by Americans. A lot of the Patriot system batteries are manned by Americans. Patriot is 94 people if you have a full contingent, from officers down to mechanics. That's 94 people in a battery. Ukraine only had 1 or 2 batteries worth of people trained. And then even the training, just to get mechanics trained up for a Patriot battery, that's a year's course. Officers take over half a year to train up. I mean, these are anti-aircraft systems with the radar base and everything else. They take a long time to train people up. I think pilots are the only ones that take longer to train up than anti-aircraft system operators. I mean, modern big systems. So when these batteries get whacked on the march by Iskandars, or they get a Kinjal into them, those aren't Ukrainians dying. Those are either Americans, Brits, Germans, or Poles that have those. When, Germany says, we're going to give you 2 batteries of Patriots. Well, they're coming equipped with the personnel. They're unofficially there, but they're there. So NATO's already fighting, and NATO's taken serious casualties. I've been contacting people from Fort Bragg that, saying, yeah, we know guys are going over there. They're getting killed. It's just being kept on the hush-hush. So families get paid off, keep your mouth shut. Here's money for your casualties. And they still don't acknowledge casualties. So when Light and the Loafers, Mr. Graham over there starts saying it's the best deal, no Americans are dying, he is lying through his teeth, obviously. Just like he's lying through his teeth, he had to pay $800,000 for 3 nights in a Radisson in Kiev. So, it's par for the course, and there's a lot of people that are dying, but it's gotten to a point where putting in these mercs and trying to get mercs out of Latin America, it's not working anymore, because the Ukrainians are running out of men. There's people, they are literally right now, they've had about 1.8 million casualties, 400,000 of 500,000 of whom are missing in action. That's filed with the Red Cross. Most of those guys, they're dead. They just don't get registered as dead because the battalion officers or brigade officers, they're siphoning off their salaries onto their own bank accounts. Massive corruption, absolutely massive corruption. But they've also opened up almost 400,000 cases of desertion. I mean, that's just, think about it. That's there's more desertions than the French and British armies combined, militaries combined. So obviously, the vast majority of Ukrainians don't want to fight. They're getting the hell out. Even amongst the POWs, you get, why they stopped doing any kind of POWs exchanges, because they've got nobody to give to exchange. They've got onesies and twosies. We've got 30, 40,000 POWs. In fact, the last couple exchanges, they started exchanging civilians. Priests that they were kidnapped off the streets and beaten, other people that were human rights protesters or opposition party members, they were handing them over to the Russian side, because normally they just execute them somewhere in the woods or torture them to death. But now they're just they've figured out they can trade them for POWs, but they're running even out of those people. So what do? Well, no more POW exchanges. You just have nobody to exchange. And on the Ukrainians in the Russian camps, I've been talking to people, and they're saying, there's a hard time getting volunteers that want to go back over, because they know the moment they get over there, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to get recycled and shoved right back up to the front to go have another go at getting killed, or they're going to be talking with the SBU, the Ukrainian version of the KGB, or the NKVD, to be more accurate. So they don't want to go over. And there's been about a fourth of Ukrainian POWs that have put in for Russian citizenship. I mean, that's something you don't normally hear. There aren't too many American POWs in German camps going, hey, I want to join, I want to be one of Hitler's citizens. Yeah, you didn't hear that. I mean, yeah, there were Germans who became American citizens after the war. They were sitting in POW camps, but not during the war. But that's what you have right now. So it's and it doesn't get it doesn't get reported in the West. So the U.S. understands where this is going. The only leverage they have, and they're losing it daily, is that less than 20%, about 18% of the Donetsk People's Republic, province of Russia, that's still in the Ukrainian hands, and the territories are in Zaporozhye and Kherson, they're still in Russian hands, or I'm sorry, in Ukrainian hands, and those are getting smaller on a daily basis, very quickly. As a matter of fact, the front, the east front east of Gulay Polye has collapsed. The Russian military is now inside of Gulay Polye, and that happened over this last day. They just broke 2 days ago. They broke through the last 4 to 5 villages, and it's just collapsed. They had a very good defense up to a certain point, and then they just ran out of people. So that area is being swept faster and faster because there's less and less territory. I mean, there's less and less soldiers to cover that territory. Same things happening in Kharkov Oblast, in Sumy Oblast, in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. Sumy is still going slow, but Kharkov, Dnipropetrovsk are speeding up. Ukraine is out of men. And those areas, there's a lot of civilians stay because they're Russians and they don't want to be part of Ukraine. They're waiting for the Russian army. There's been, in fact, there was a interview with a Ukrainian POW who just got captured in Pokrovsk. Said, when we're stepping away, any civilians don't evacuate with us. We call them zhduni. Zhduni means stay behinders or waiters. So we just kill them. If we have to level buildings, we know they're hiding in the basement. We just level the whole building. We don't care for them. They're not people. And he's just flat out. He's flat out talking. Obviously, the guy's not been tortured. He's feeling kind of pretty good, I guess. I can send you the video if you want. It's been translated into English with subtitles. So, and it's not the first time. It's not the first time. As a matter of fact, one of the points in these 28 points is amnesty for everyone. So those Azov psychopaths that are in Russian custody would get amnesty for these out-and-out Nazis that were massacring civilians. Would all get amnesty. We just, it's all good. Go ahead. On that level. So of course, yeah, this is absolutely a ludicrous deal that nobody in Russia is going to take.
Yeah, wow. That is a lot that is not getting reported in the West. You're absolutely right, especially when it comes to the involvement of all of these Western countries beyond just mercenaries. And I did want to get into the territory aspect a little bit because I noticed that on Trump's plan, it mentions that Crimea, Lugansk, and Donetsk, they'll be recognized as they describe it de facto Russian, but that Kherson and Zaporozhye will be frozen along the line of contact and that Russia will relinquish other agreed territories it controls outside of the 5 regions. Now, I'm curious about this warning, but also when you look at the latest movement that Russia has made, right, taking control of Kupiansk and how hard they fought for that town and some of these other areas, I'm curious too, is it realistic to think that Russia would give up any of the territory that it has fought for, even if it is outside of these 5 regions?
First of all, by the way, there's one more caveat. The territory of Donetsk that they leave will now become a demilitarized zone, which basically would be a lawless area where any terrorist organizations from Ukraine could operate with impunity, which is insane. Okay, we'll begin with the fact that the problem here, the underlying problem, is the West looks at Vladimir Vladimirovich as a dictator. He is an elected president. He's a lawyer, so he's very judicial, and there's a very strict constitution. And the constitution says once somebody joins the Russian Federations, that's it. The territory is Russian. No president, nobody has the right to release any of the territory. So to say that we're just going to freeze the line, well, by Russian law, the rest of Kherson and the rest of Zaporozhye are still Russian. But the West knows, to the degree the West knows this, if Putin was to agree to this, the guarantee is that would be used as propaganda inside of Russia to try to start a coup or some kind of a civil war. Guaranteed. So that's just feeding your enemy with PR. So that's not gonna fly because again, Vladimir Vladimirovich knows the Constitution. He knows what's written in there. It's very black and white. As far as these other territories, it's interesting the wording that has been used to describe them. Outside of the 5 provinces, because okay, if you look at ethnically Russian areas, well, if you look at ethnically Russian areas, almost all of Ukraine is ethnically Russian. Ukrainization started under the communists. Lenin created modern Ukraine by taking Mala Russia, small Russia, and joining it with Novorussia, new Russia, which wasn't really all that new, but it'd been emptied out through centuries of warfare and had been resettled, which is the eastern portion, and combining them into a Ukraine. Ukraina literally means in Russian a hinterland. You've never heard of a country called hinterland because there can't be a country called hinterland. Hinterland's always the edge of somebody else's civilization. So in this case, the Kraina was the edge of both the Russian and the Polish civilizations, and some to the Ottoman Turks were moving in the south until they were ousted out of there. Kraina used to be where St. Petersburg is, because that used to be the edge. So Krai just means edge in Slavic languages. So that's just to understand that. If you look, if you go in, particularly if you do it in Russian, you type into Google or you type into Yandex, Ukrainization, 1920s, and go to images, you'll get lots of scanned photographs of various newspaper articles that tell you about how the Bolsheviks were Ukrainizing the population, right? Because all these areas, particularly Kiev was absolutely a Russian city. Nobody spoke Ukrainian, which was considered a village dialect. Russian was the literal language everybody spoke. It's like if you go to Bavaria, in the villages they speak Bavarian. In the cities they all speak Hochdeutsch. So it's considered, it's the village language. So there's the same thing. Well, they were forced Ukrainized in the 1920s after the Russian Civil War. And you'll see the articles that say so many people went to this Ukrainization class or Ukrainian language classes, and it was to a point where you couldn't be in any kind of management, whether government or business or factory management, if you didn't speak Ukrainian. And nobody spoke Ukrainian. Most of these politicians still don't speak Ukrainian because it's a foreign language to them. It's a secondary language. And in any of these hot mics, they're always speaking Russian because that's their native language. Zelensky, first and foremost, of all these guys. And Poroshenko couldn't barely speak Ukrainian either. They were learning on the fly to look Ukrainian. It's kind of like, the Zionists in Israel a lot of them changed their names to sound more Semitic, because their regular names were Polish or Hungarian or German, to fit, quote, kind of fit in. Well, these guys, and the reason I'm saying this is this process was going on. All the lands, they're historical Russian lands. Okay, if you go far enough back, historical Russian lands go all the way into parts of Western Poland. But that became part of Poland back in the 1500s, so we're not going to go that far back. But ethnically Russian lands until the communists, you're looking at Odessa, which was built by Catherine the Great. You're looking at Nikolaev. These are lands outside of what is already in Russia. Odessa, Nikolaev, Poltava, Kiev, Sumy, Kharkov Oblast. Some people will claim more. Now, the Poles are claiming the western portions because they did hold that in power for quite a while. And then the Hungarians have Zakarpattia, which was handed to them by Stalin. The Romanians claim a chunk. The Belarus claim a chunk. Slovaks claim a chunk. So basically, you have a Frankenstein nation put together from all these other lands. And it's all going to fall apart because those people are looking at it and going, yeah, that's our land. So these areas, when they go into, they're going into now Kharkov and Sumy and Dnipropetrovsk, the language has changed. When they were trying to make a deal and they were hoping to make a negotiated deal, the language is occupied territories because they were outside of the territories that voted to quit Ukraine and join Russia. But now the language has been liberated territories. And the point to tell the population, we're not leaving. You're now part. You can come out of your and not be afraid. You're going to be part of Russia, and we're not going to leave you. Because what happened during the Kharkov Ukrainian offensive, a lot of people that were helping Russians, a lot of them had the white banderas on their on their arms. They were mass murdered. There were videos that were coming out where the SBU was just dumping bodies into pits, civilian bodies with their arms tied behind their backs, women, children, people. Well, it happened in Bucha. A lot of these guys, they had the white banderas on their arms to show that they were on the side of the Russians. And a lot of these bodies were lying there with their arms tied behind their heads, which, by the way, why they never gave names of who exactly was supposedly killed them, because they were bringing those bodies in. So you get that. And this is exactly what happened in Kherson and Zaporozhye, too. The Russian forces came in. Putin wasn't planning on having that join Russia because he's hoping for a negotiated peace. And the local people said, when the negotiated peace collapsed, the locals didn't want to cooperate with the Russian military and Russian government. They said flat out, you're going to leave and we're going to get murdered. We don't want to cooperate because we're going to get murdered when the Ukrainians come back in. And the Russian government went, well, shite. Okay, so we are changing plans now because if we leave, these people are going to get butchered, just like the people were getting butchered in Kharkov, near Kiev, in areas like that. So they went to a different format. I mean, this whole conflict has evolved to several stages from what it was originally meant to be to what it is today. And I think now the government's just figured out, finally. Well, I don't think figured out. Finally, come to the right conclusion. This gets settled on the battlefield. This isn't going to get settled any other way.
Yeah, and I think
Sorry,
that is
from the fire hose.
No, that's okay. I think that's a lot of good information. And again, what we're not hearing in the West. And another good reminder that this conflict has been ongoing and ongoing. The last thing I wanted to bring up was Russian President Putin's response. And I know you were kind of noting there when it comes to this reality that, look, this is going to be settled on the battlefield. Because, yes, he's being very diplomatic. He's saying that Trump's plan could be the basis of a future agreement. But the one thing that he said that really stood out to me was he was talking about the situation in Kupiansk, mentioning how Kiev had insisted that everything that Russia was saying was fake news, that there was only a handful of Russian soldiers in the town when it was surrounded and being essentially controlled by Russia at that point. And Putin specifically said, quote, what happened in Kupiansk will inevitably occur in other areas of the front, perhaps not as quickly as we would prefer, but inevitably. So when it comes to what's happening on the battlefield and kind of what that timeline looks like and the impact it has overall, what are you keeping an eye on there?
There's several areas because the whole front is moving now. Where it used to be you'd have 2 or 3 offensive zones. Right now you've got the entire front moving. There are Russian forces north and south of Kherson that have crossed the river. They're more of a diversionary force to pull Ukrainian troops that have been moved up to Zaporozhye city, away from that defense as Russia is moving up to Zaporozhye city. Gulay Pole is about 60% surrounded. There are Russians on the edges of the city that have already entered the city from the east. So it depends how fast. Right now, the other Ukrainian areas are crumbling. The thing is In Zaporozhye, Gulay Polye was the eastern fortress in that area because the city was on literally on high ground, surrounded by fields, great areas of fire, lines of sight. As far as the Donbass, Pokrovsk and Mirograd are it for most of this front. I mean, this is an area in World War II. It took the Red Army 6 months to punch through this giant agglomeration of towns and villages that just bleed into each other. And the Germans were preparing their defense for about a year. And it took about half a year to punch through that defense. Now, Kiev was preparing that defense for 8 years. I mean, we're talking massive amounts of rebarbed concrete that was poured, elevators for artillery pieces, tunnels running from houses to houses, buildings to buildings, reinforced walls and buildings. So they made this whole line into one giant fortification. Russia, in an effort not to just waste its manpower, what they do is they come up to a fortified area and just start leveling it with artillery, with aviation, everything else, and then grabbing position after position. But these areas were very heavily fortified. Problem for the Ukrainians is now that Pokrovsk and Mirograd, well, Pokrovsk has fallen, Mirograd is turned into a graveyard for a lot of Ukrainian troops. There's still possibly up to 2,000 troops in that area surrounded. There's a 100-kilometer frontage that's empty. The fortifications are done. From here to the Dnieper River, in some places are 40, 50 kilometers, 80 kilometers. It's pretty much empty fields. The Ukrainians have tried digging a new line of defense, just basically a line of trenches up and down that area out in the open. There's not enough villages to really hold on to as anchor points, but they don't have the manpower to fill them. So, and they're out in the open, particularly. So they're going to get just demolished with aviation and with glide bombs, FOBs. So it's a suicide mission, and they don't have the troops. So sooner or later, they're going to have to fall back to the other side of the Dnieper River as some kind of a barrier. And again, the Dnieper is not an impenetrable barrier, far from it. But it would be a natural stopping point for regrouping Russian forces before moving forward again. But that's where they're going to start running. And you're seeing that with Kupiansk falling, that whole area, the Ukrainians are now in disarray and falling back. And they've got a river to their back. So how many get across that river, how many don't, we'll live and see. But that's what we're seeing. We're seeing some continuous, really wasteful counterattacks just for PR stunts. Like they try to deblock Pokrovsk. Syrsky, general body bags. General 200. 200 is the 200 is the code, the old Soviet code for KIA. 300 is for WIA. When you're doing reports, you got 200, so many, 300, so many, and so on down the code line. So they named him. His nickname is General 200 or General Body Bags, because that's what he turns his troops into, body bags, or bodies for the bags. And you know he got reinforcements, about 10,000 troops, and everyone's like, where did he get them from? Well, when the counterattack started, it was pretty easy to figure out where he got them from. These are absolutely untrained people that are just being tossed in body waves and dying off in the same way. Because if you haven't gone through proper training, I mean, you hear artillery, the whistle of artillery. If you're not on the ground, you will fall on the ground. You may be falling in small pieces on the ground, but you will be falling sooner or later on the ground. And the way you get that down to a robotic reaction is to practice, practice, practice. You practice it. You practice sniper drills. You practice artillery drills. You practice contact drills so that it becomes mechanical. You don't have to think it. I mean, I've done all this. I would still need a refresher because I've gotten rusty. Even though I've practiced and I've trained people since when all this started, but I'm still rusty to where I was before. These guys have no survival instinct because they're civilians, basically. Their brain freezes. If you ever watch a terrorist attack, half the civilians are standing around. They don't know what to do, and they're getting shot by terrorists because they don't have that survival instinct that's drilled into them. their brain freezes the reality of, oh crap, and by the time that thought process goes through, okay, what do I do now? If it's artillery or some of that shell's blown up and their body's flying in every direction. And this is what's happening with these guys, because they have absolutely no training. They're scared out of their minds. And believe me, when people are scared like that, most of them will freeze. They'll bunch up, they'll freeze, they do everything wrong that can be done wrong, and they die in mass. And the fact that they're sent out like this just tells you how much that government does not give a damn about its own people. The people are money to be earned off of. Zelensky, they had what his name just Klitschko, mayor of Kiev, comes out. We've got to lower the enlistment age because we're running out of people. We've got to cut it down to 22. Okay, let's see. You got one son that's 21. You got another son that's 23. Oh, but they're in Germany. That's right. They're never going to fight. None of these politicians have their families in country. Umirov, who was a defense minister for a year. Some people think he's in Israel, but he's not Jewish. He's Crimean Tatar. He's in Florida. His family's been living in Florida since 2016. And I mean, his entire family are U.S. citizens. His wife, his kids, his brother and his family, his parents-in-laws. He's been buying property under different LLCs for each of them. And they keep switching the properties around every year or two. So it makes it hard to figure out who's the owner of what, in case you want to confiscate it back because it's stolen assets. And he took off for the U.S. because he's a U.S. citizen. He was just earning money in Ukraine. And all these guys are the same way. Zelensky's parents live in a $6 million mansion in Israel. His wife and kids live in London. He's supposedly, I don't know, it's been denied, but there's been good reports that it's true. He's the 9th largest landowner in the U.S. now, private landowner. The president of the unrecognized North Cyprus Republic, or the occupied portion by Turkey, came out and said, Zelensky bought a hotel casino there. There was news that came out Zelensky bought for a small amount of money, an investment bank in London for 1.5 billion pounds sterling. It's all these guys, they're there to earn off Ukraine and then get the hell out. They're not going to die from old age in Ukraine. So to them, the people are an asset to be traded away as much money as you can steal. So that there's thousands upon thousands dying this way or being left to die if they're wounded. It's money. It's not my real people. It's not me. It's not my family. My family's some far away. And that's the entirety of that government. That's the majority of the parliament. They're all like that. They're in there to make money and then get the hell out of Ukraine. And we'll leave whatever wreckage is left. We'll leave it, let them survive, eat each other, whatever. We're gone out of here. We're going to have the best life we possibly could. Thanks to the American taxpayer, by the way. So, do I like it or not? But that's the reality. The most corrupt country in the world.
Yeah, it's a reminder of the dire situation that the Ukrainian people are in, and that the U.S. does not care, right? Has no care in the world for all of the Ukrainians that are dying, or all of even if they act like for a moment that they care about any kind of corruption, they are the ones fueling it. And it's much, much larger than anything that we have seen reported on in the West, at least. I know that there is certainly a lot at stake here all around, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down all of the latest here. Stanislav Krapivnik, a former U.S. Army officer and military and geopolitical expert. Y'all be sure to check out his show, In the Eyes of Truth. Stas, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanctioned. You can also check out Sanctioned over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Rachel Blevins. As always, thank you all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.